In my Liverpool home, in my Liverpool home, we speak with an accent exceedingly rare. Meet under a statue exceedingly bare. And if you want a cathedral, we've got one to spare. In my Liverpool home. I was born in Liverpool, down by the docks. My religion was Catholic, occupation hard knocks. And stealing from lorries, I was adept. And under old overcoats, each night we slept. In my Liverpool home. In my Liverpool home. We speak with an accent exceedingly rare. Meet under a statue exceedingly fair. And if you want a cathedral, we've got one to spare. In my Liverpool home.
That was great, boys, great.
Thank you, Clay.
Now then, I take it you're all gardeners.
No, not me, not me. I'm only here for the theme gardens and the Liverpool quiz garden and the sculpture that's marvellous all around the grounds here.
So they're doing things for you?
Yeah, the flowers and things, I'm not very...
But there is a gardener.
I'm a gardener.
I'm a gardener.
In fact, I live just up the road, so I'm very interested in what they're managing to grow up here, because we have a wind problem being on the banks of the river.
Yeah, you must have. So you're learning things here as well?
Indeed, I am, Clay.
Cliff, you're looking interested. You're a gardener.
Yes, I do a little bit of gardening. I like to sow the flowers and a little bit of vegetable alongside it. Marvellous.
Great. And?
My wife won't let me near the garden. No, she won't let me in there at all. So I've come for the entertainment and the festivals. We've got folk jazz, shanties, marvellous sports going on all the time.
Theatres.
Alternative Olympics. Oh, theatres. Tremendous shows. And some marvellous shows from overseas, you know.
Yeah.
The Japanese have brought in shows.
Everything.
Tremendous.
It's a family day out, isn't it?
It's a family 3-4 days out.
Four
You
days
can't
out,
see it all
yeah.
in one day.
No. It's an extravaganza of the arts,
Absolutely.
culture, fun, fantasy,
A
and
lot.
not only that, the spinners as well.
Yes, there's a tremendous amount of extraneous entertainment here and a great family day out. But for me, the gardens are the thing, and there's a lot you can learn.
Indeed, there is.
Well, Ray Bird, you're the designer of the British garden here. You actually won a design competition for this. Tell me, first of all, what you see as the typical traditional British garden.
Well, in my mind, Jeff, what characterises the British garden, as far as I'm concerned, is the division of the garden into a series of spaces, very much in the early 20th century garden style, and a series of spaces whereby people walk through from one to the other, revealing the garden in a series of stages.
And you've done that here, starting from the very formal, going right through lots of different stages into the informal. One of the things I like about it is the fact that these separate stages are about the size of the average suburban garden, if you like, so lots to learn here. We're in the formal area, right at the very entrance of the garden, and my feeling here is one of relaxation, of peace, if you like.
Yes, after the rigours of walking the festival, I think it's a good idea to give people the opportunity to pause and relax a while before venturing into the rest of the garden.
Same sort of thing, of course, when you come home from your stressful day at work and you just want to sit out and relax and enjoy it. Yeah. You've used lots of greens and whites, very subdued colours here, and you rely very heavily on foliage.
Yes, in this garden, the emphasis is very much on the piece of the greenery, and here, for instance, we have a variety of textural contrasts between the Japanese maple, Acer palmatum, which has got a very delicate foliage and which turns a beautiful crimson during the autumn time. To the left there is cord-lined australis.
And that's a very spiky foliage. Is that going to be entirely hardy?
Yes, provided one offers a certain amount of protection during the winter months. And a useful tip is to tie the leaves together during the severest weather. And To the right there, we have Fatsia japonica, which is an evergreen foliage.
Yeah, it makes a superb little cameo, that, doesn't it? And then offset
Yes.
at the side here with lamium.
That's lamium. It's not the very rampant lamium, which tends to be a weed and should only be used where you've got lots of space, perhaps under trees. This is a slow-growing variety in a much finer leaf called Beacon Silver. And in front of that we have the dependable hosta, and this one is Hosta Thomas Hogg. This, of course, is not an evergreen, and it dies down to nothing during the autumn and winter time. So it's useful, perhaps, to underplant that with bulbs.
Oh, now this is a very much more informal feeling. This border here is, to me, a sort of a typical modern cottage garden border, if you like.
Yes, it's a mixed border, flanked by a hedge and containing a very wide range of plants, shrubs, roses, herbaceous plants, very much in an informal style of planting, unified by the flowers, that most of which have a sort of vertical emphasis, and by the foliage, particularly the silver foliage subjects in the foreground here.
Yes, you've used all sorts of different shapes of foliage in those grey and silver plants, and brightened here and there by things like this Hemerocallis, which really stands out well, doesn't it?
Standing out particularly well against the Artemisia.
Yeah. You'll obviously pay a lot of attention to foliage because you've got here another perfect example of really good foliage planting.
Yes, in the foreground we have Cornus canadensis, the mat-forming cornus. Behind that, Formium.
Two formiums there,
Yes, two
actually,
formiums, the purple one and the yellow one, the contrast in terms of their colour. Behind that is the pellicite, which, as you see, has got very bold foliage. And behind that, the Ligularia, whose flower spikes there, with the black stems, reflect the formium in front.
Well, it makes a tremendous contrasting little cameo there, but the thing that worries me is those formiums, because they're natives of New Zealand and not entirely hardy in this country.
That's right, and I think one needs to be very careful where you site them in order to provide them with shelter. We have the screen fence here, which protects it from northerly winds, and a lot of planting around it. And indeed, around the garden generally, we have a lot of planting and earth modelling to give protection to the garden so that we can grow an enormous range of plants within it.
Of course, one of the great things about English gardens is that you can grow this immensely wide range of plants, can't you? Provided you give them the right conditions of soil and shelter and light or shade as they want them. You've got another perfect example here where you've created the area for moisture-loving plants. Now, how did you do that?
Well, we dug out the area for the pool, and in doing so we found that it was naturally very, very moist. And we then added a lot of peat in order to retain that moisture, and so that was quite a simple, straightforward way of providing the right ground conditions.
Of course, if you've got a very dry spot, I suppose you can actually line it with a plastic liner, some holes in the bottom and then the peat in that peaty soil, and then of course you can create moisture conditions again. The astilbes seem to be doing extremely well there.
They seem to be doing well. Others, unfortunately, are not performing quite as we would have wished, and that's because of the particularly untypically British climate we've been having.
Yes, so it's been a very dry
this
year,
summer.
hasn't it? Yeah.
The Regersias are but a fraction of the size they ought to be, and of course we lose to a certain extent the reflective qualities of the pool.
I see, so the idea was, or is really, that when those plants grow up, you get the reflections in the pool as well.
That is correct,
And
yes.
a little bonus, yeah. And you've got at the top here quite the reverse, a plant which really must have very dry conditions, the agave.
Well, that's right. This normally grows in the deserts of Central America, but it can be grown quite successfully, even in Liverpool, provided that you give it very good drainage, and hence it's in a pot, and provided that during the winter months it's kept bone dry.
So you could lift that out and put it in your greenhouse or in the summer house, perhaps?
That is why we've put it in the pot. Firstly, it's a very architectural plant and it looks good in a pot, but also it has this added bonus of being able to move it into shelter.
Well, it seems appropriate that I should find an allotment in the International Garden Centre, because after all, allotments are part and parcel of the British way of life. And this is a particularly good one, and tending it is Ted Bibington. Am I right, Ted?
That's right, Ted.
That's right.
That's it.
Now then, how long have you been doing this one?
This plot,
Yeah.
18 months we got ready for this. We started, the stuff had to be ready the 2nd of May for the opening time. And if you can imagine, with allotments, the garden allotments, that something had to be in the ground. And we got it in the ground.
Did you?
Man, we had a bit of a battle. We had 2 layers of topsoil in here, about 10 ton of muck on here, good plants brought in from outside the nursery, and up they come.
Where do you get the muck from? There aren't any cows around Liverpool, are there?
No, yeah, we got it. No, they made the special effort for us.
What's the cows doing? Anyway, it's great stuff. It is. It's marvellous stuff, honestly.
Yeah, the thing is this. You see, we had the windbreaker up there.
Yeah.
So that wind, it did some damage at first. When we got the windbreaker up, well, there's 4 types of wind. You know, you get a strong wind, mild, fresh and strong, and you get regimental wind as well. You get that as well.
And you were getting
get all
regimental.
kinds of wind there, yeah.
So, what is the total cost of the allotment?
Around about, I would say, for the stuff, about £10 for the produce. About £10.
That's for the seed, is it?
Yeah, but then you've got your rents to pay.
How much is that?
Well, the rents at our study road is £18.50
A year?
a year.
That's not bad.
Well, and
Because you get pounds and pounds off it.
oh God, now you get loads of stuff up here. This here, a plot like this would keep a family, as I said, for 12 months, no problem.
What, a family of 4?
A family of 4,
Yeah, I
easy,
bet it will.
no problem.
I bet it will.
Yeah,
And
it's just a matter of knowing what to do and how to plan your garden out.
Yeah, well, planning is important, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. Gives you working basis.
Yeah.
Gives you working basis for to do. And the easiest thing if you have, say you have a bed about 3 foot like that, and you have paths up and down, small ones, just you can work each side of your bed like that, see.
How
you're not stretching over like that.
No, but well, how big is the allotment, this one?
This one's be about
Couple hundred?
200 square yards, approximately.
But
Yeah.
the average allotment in the area is bigger,
Oh,
isn't
the
it?
average allotment area is 300 square yards.
The other thing I like is to see some flowers around your vegetables.
Well, the thing is this, you see, that as people like to see flowers.
Yeah.
Whether it's a man or a woman, they like to see flowers, and this more or less sets it off the
I like
ground,
to see flowers as well, Ted, but I also like to see this. That's proof that you can grow things.
That's it there, look.
Beautiful.
Look at that, look at that.
In my Liverpool home, in my Liverpool home, we speak with an accent exceedingly rare, meet under a statue exceedingly bare, and if you want a cathedral, we've got one to spare. In my Liverpool home, way back in the 40s, the world it went mad. Mr. Hitler threw at us everything that he had. When the smoke and the bombs had all cleared from the air, thank God, said me old man, that the pierhead's still there. In my Liverpool home, in my Liverpool home, we speak with an accent exceedingly rare, meet under a statue exceedingly fair, and if you want a cathedral, we've got one to swear. In my Liverpool home,
We welcome Gardener's World and its team to this desolate site, transformed into a dream. A great inspiration to folk everywhere. If it grows on our docks, it'll grow anywhere.
In my Liverpool home, in my Liverpool home, we speak with an accent exceedingly rare. Meet under a statue exceedingly bare. And if you want a cathedral, we've got one to swear. In my Liverpool home.
Well, we're now at the other end of the garden, and by way of a change, this is completely informal. I love that bank of heathers there.
Yes, heathers are an excellent ground cover material, particularly on very steep banks and banks that are very inaccessible to get to. Note also the rocks there. They haven't been placed there like a plum pudding that one sees all too frequently, but very carefully placed in a series of strata.
So they look really natural. Yeah.
Indeed.
In this part of the garden, you've got very subdued planting, a lot of grass and big sweeps of the grass, very informal, but quite in contrast to some of the other gardens. Don't you find that when you create all these separate garden rooms that you're in danger of making the thing bitty?
Well, it's particularly important in this sort of garden to ensure that there are focal points, such as this statue here, that link these garden rooms together, one to another.
And you've also used the same sort of materials throughout, haven't you, I notice?
Well, there are two particular instances where the materials have unified the garden. Firstly, in the paving, we've got the same paving material used throughout the garden, and also with the timber structures. All the structures are built using the same timber, with the same members, and you know, by doing this, it means that you have this consistency running throughout.
And
I think
course,
it's very important.
If you look through this pergola, I think that there is another fine example of how you've drawn the eye up to the end with the focal point, which is that cordyline, and that, of course, is where we came in.
Indeed it is.
It is difficult to believe that just under 2 years ago, the festival site looked like this. A typical example of man's destruction and desecration of his environment. And then teams of men moved in, re-landscaped the whole area, and what was once wasteland is now wonderland. And the people of the city of Liverpool can be justly proud of what has been achieved here on the festival site.
It really is a wonderful atmosphere here, isn't it? Lots of fun, lots of good gardening too. I am now in the theme garden area where there are quite a lot of gardens, each with a different accent. This one was created as the result of a cooperation between a British nurseryman and a water garden specialist. And because their business is plants, they've tried to show here a vast range of plants and how best to provide the right conditions to grow them. Lots of herbaceous plants, like this wonderful echinacea here, a really striking herbaceous perennial that one requires lots of sun and good drainage, so that's up here at the top in the nice sunny position. But they also want to show how to grow moisture-loving and aquatic plants, so they've built this little pool down at the bottom here with a stream running into it, and nestling in the corner in a boggy part are plants like this polygonum. Now this one, given the right conditions, will continue to flower like that with those lovely little pink flowers right the way through from the middle of the summer right through to the end of the season. And how about this for a colour combination? Two plants, the red crocosmia and the blue agapanthus, both of those actually raised on the nursery of the people who built the exhibit. And what a great show those two make together. There's also a wide range of conifers showing the different sizes, the different shapes and habits and colours of conifers. There are far too many for me to go through them all, but if I had to choose one, it would be this thuya. It's an ideal little plant for the larger rockery. It's quite slow growing, and look at that wonderful colour.
I wish I was back in Liverpool, Liverpool town where I was born, where there ain't no trees, no scented breeze, no fields of waving corn, but there's lots of girls with peroxide curls, and the black and tan flows free. With 6 in a bed by the old pier head, and it's Liverpool town for me.
It's 10 long years since I went away to roam the wide world o'er. Me very first trip on an old tramp ship that was bound for Baltimore. I was 10 days sick and I just couldn't stick all that bobbing up and down. So I told him, Jack, to turn right back to dear old Liverpool town.
I wish I was back in Liverpool, Liverpool town where I was born, where there ain't no trees, no scented breeze, no fields of waving corn, but there's lots of girls with peroxide curls, and the black and tan flows free. With 6 in a bed by the old pier head, and it's Liverpool town for me.
We dug the Mersey Tunnel, boys, way back in 33. Dug an hole in the ground until we found an old cold Wallasey. And the foreman cried,
Come on outside, the roof is falling down.
and I'm telling you, Jack, we all swam back to dear old Liverpool town.
I wish I was back in Liverpool, Liverpool town where I was born, where there ain't no trees, no scented breeze, no fields of waving corn, but there's lots of girls with peroxide curls, and the black and tan flows free. With 6 in a bed by the old pier head, and it's Liverpool town for me.
There's every race and colour of face and every kind of names.
But the pigeons on the pier head, they'll treat us all the same.
And if you walk up a Parliament Street, you'll see faces black and brown.
And I've also seen them orange and green in dear old Liverpool town.
I wish I was back in Liverpool,
Centre of culture.
Liverpool town where I was born,
Horticulture.
where there ain't no trees, no scented breeze, no fields of waving corn, but there's lots of girls with peroxide curls, and the black and tan flows free. With 6 in a bed by the old pier head, and it's Liverpool town for me. Yep.
So far, we've looked at British gardens and we've seen some traditional British entertainment. But we mustn't forget that this is an international garden festival and very much an international flavour to it. There are gardens from countries all over the world. And we've chosen to look at the Japanese garden because this is so different from our own method of gardening. The Japanese use their gardens in a different way, whereas we use them for activities. We might, for instance, eat in our gardens, the children might kick footballs around, and most important of all, we use them for the activity of growing plants. But to the Japanese, the garden is there to be viewed and to walk slowly around, the idea being that in a hectic and often violent world, the peace and tranquility of the garden can renew the inner calm. Now, to do this, they follow nature very closely. For instance, you won't find many cultivated plants in Japanese gardens. Most of the plants that you see here you would find actually in the wild in Japanese gardens. And here is another perfect example of representing nature in the waterfall. It looks to me as though it's been here for a century and it's just a jumble of rocks where nature has placed them. In fact, each one of these rocks was carefully selected at the quarry and placed here just so to make this very informal, natural effect. The other philosophy that is different is their philosophy of the yin and the yo. They believe that nature balances things by opposites. Things like hot and cold, fire and water, male and female. And they carry this right through in their garden design. Here's a good example. Whereas, for instance, if we had a heavy planting like this on one side of the waterfall, we would probably balance it by a heavy planting on the other side, but not the Japanese. On this side, we have a very sparse planting and an open space of grass behind it as the balance. They also have a different attitude to trees, whereas we might use as a specimen tree a single stem plant with a crown on the top. They find that uninteresting, and they prefer to use specimen trees like this gnarled old Acer here, which are twisted by the wind, and that gives them very much more interest. Or alternatively, they go for multi-stemmed specimens like this other Acer here. And you'll notice that they're not afraid to put their tallest plants in the front of the border and the shortest ones behind, quite the reverse of what we do. But notice that this tree has been carefully trimmed at the bottom so that you can still see the smaller plants behind. And that gives the impression of much greater perspective and makes the garden look bigger. I won't pretend to understand the philosophy completely, but I can tell you this, that of all the gardens here in Liverpool, this is the one where you really get that feeling of peace and tranquility.
Well, this is my kind of garden, Joe. Now, Joe Barnes, isn't it?
Yes, that's right.
And this is a Staffordshire lock keeper's cottage garden.
That's right, yes.
And your design, your idea.
A group of us, yes. I'm one of them, yes.
And what was the sort of concept behind it? Because it's in bits, isn't it?
It is. It's a very small area, in fact, and we wanted to get as much show and colour in as small an area as possible. And the idea is that we've got a vegetable plot over there, we've got a herb bed along the front here, going off into the woodland edge, and we've got herbaceous plants here and here with an edge of annuals along the front.
So it's in 3 bits, really?
Yes, that's right.
And this, you imagine, is what a lock keeper would have had, let's say, 100 years ago or so?
Yeah, that's that sort of thing, very, very loosely based on our ideas of what lock keepers would have done.
But in those days, of course, they didn't go in so much for the formal bedding, did they?
No, no. In fact, it's a sort of opportunist garden. They put something where there's a space, if you like, and although ours has a basic design to it, there's lots of things popped in amongst everything else.
Yeah. So if grandmother had a plant, you know, it would end up in grandson's garden and so on. And it's a lovely little mixture here, I think, because you've got the evening primrose, you've got lamb's ears and lupins, and the perennial anemone japonica there, but mixed in with annuals to give you sort of a real splash of colour.
That's right, yeah. In fact, perennials are the best plants really to use for the cottage because they're easy-going. They give you a lot for your labour.
And I like the close planting because weeds don't get a chance to come up.
Well, not very many do anyway.
But you're going to have a bit of a problem later on, aren't you? Because the colour is going to sort of fade away a bit.
Yes, in fact, I mean, this was part of our plan all along to have some colour at all times of the year, from March to October for the duration of the festival.
Well, Joe, I think it's a little gem. And of course, it's most appropriate that you were here because in 2 years' time, in '86, the next garden festival will be in your county, in Stoke-on-Trent.
That's right, yes.
Fare thee well, a prince's landing stage, River Mersey, fare thee well. Or I'm bound for California, it's a place that you know right well.
So fare thee well, my own true love. When I return, united we will be. It's not the leaving of Liverpool that grieves me, but me darling when I think of thee.